But no, if your family, if you, the audience, you're listening, and your parents, your family has already created something,
Mm.
shame on you if you don't study that craft to grow it and build from it.
Mhm.
So I accepted the dual career, so to speak, of already continuing to grow something that exists and then starting from scratch and creating your own thing. And at the same time, I did want that hands-on experience as a nurse, which is what I studied for.
Hello, Empower Nation. Welcome to Empower Her Money podcast. I am your host, Angela Duncan, speaker, best-selling author, serial entrepreneur, talking all things money and business. Today's episode is sponsored by freemoneytipsbook.com, freemoneytipsbook.com. Head over there, download your free ebook, 7 Unshakable Tips to get you started on your financial journey. Today's episode, we are switching things up a little bit. It is a joint interview episode with myself and with Marysol Uribe. She is a holistic health advocate. She is a life and health coach, has her own podcast, best-selling author, 1 Billion Mindset. And we are going to drop some value bombs for you today about business, philanthropy, and giving back. Hi, Marysol. How are you today?
Hi, Angela. I'm doing amazing.
Yes. So for the audience listening or watching the video, we're switching things up a little bit since we both have our platforms and our podcast. We're going to do a joint interview today so that we can both add value for the audience listening.
Yes, and I love the idea, Angela. I think people need to live in synergy to get the most out of what this world has to offer.
Yes, absolutely. So do you want to start off and maybe tell your story a little bit?
Sure. So it was 2017. I had just graduated from college. I received my baccalaureate of science in nursing from Mount St. Mary's University. And at the time, grad school wasn't on the horizon. I wasn't sure what to do about continuing education until I came across um, like one of Grant's advertisements about going to 10X conference and I believe it was Marlin Stadium at the time. So I got my hero ticket, took my bags, booked my flight, booked my stay, and that opened my eyes into the world of entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
And I was resisting it, Angela, for the longest time. My parents came to this country in the 80s, migrated from Mexico. And it's very customary in that town where they were from to have your house divided in which the front exhibits your business and the back is where you live. So that was
Hmm.
customary. So here, growing up in a traditional formal education, I was told by my parents to study. So you
Hmm.
don't do the arduous, laborious work such as they had to do.
Hmm.
And so I hit the books. Um, fast forward a little bit. After the conference, I got the idea to begin to become an author.
Hmm.
How and what content to write, I still didn't have much of a clue, but two things. I committed to learning more from my parents, which I had been resisting. I was saying, no, well, you told me to study. I'm gonna hit the books and just study. But no, if your family, if you, the audience, you're listening, and your parents, your family has already created something,
Hmm.
shame on you if you don't study that craft to grow it and build from it.
Mm-hmm.
So I accepted the dual career, so to speak, of already continuing to grow something that exists and then starting from scratch and creating your own thing. And at the same time, I did want that hands-on experience as a nurse, which is what I studied for. So my first job in that career was in the operating room at a prestigious hospital in Los Angeles. So that's a little bit of my story for now. Tell me a bit about you, Angela. What was the Angela of the past and where are you at today?
Yes. So I grew up I'm a survivor of childhood abuse and trauma. My mother was an alcoholic and my stepfather abused me. We grew up in poverty and I moved around a ton. And so when I was 18 years old, I decided this was no longer a healthy situation and I moved out of the home. But I knew I wanted to go to college. I knew that I wanted to study numbers and money because it was always fascinating to me. And I always thought that if I had money, then I would never have to live in that type of situation. So I was a financial advisor on a team for a few years. I ran a top performing Remax real estate office with my ex-husband and sold that company. I built an insurance company, sold that company. And then this year, I really thought I was going to retire. And of course, as an entrepreneur, and you probably understand this, I got really bored. And I thought, I'm going to launch a podcast. I want to be able to teach women about money on a platform that could be international and hopefully easy accessible to many people. And then I thought if we could share other women's stories about how their business or how they've learned about money over the years, then we can reach a broader audience with different stories that people could relate to and understand so that perhaps they would do something differently with their business and with their money. And so that's how Empower Her Money podcast came about. And it's just been a ton of fun and obviously how we are talking here today. So hopefully we can give some great information to the audience to help them further their business and their money and just to be able to be on a similar mission to change the world.
I love it.
Mhm.
Backstory about my podcast. It just launched April 2022, and it was inspired by a song that I wrote on a whim. I met a producer at a conference, and he's up north 6 hours away.
Mhm.
And Angela, you talked about your family sometimes holding you back in life. If I would have told my family that I was going to go on a whim 6 hours away to film a song, I would have met some resistance.
Mhm.
So I didn't tell anyone and it just left. And it was like 4 a.m. when I took the road. I was fasted. And long story short, I almost didn't make it back home because my
Wow.
electrolytes were out of whack. It was scorching hot.
Mhm.
I had my hands on the wheel and they begun to cramp.
Mhm.
And very irresponsible of me to not take a needed, but I wasn't hungry though. This is me rationalizing proper nutrition and hydration with me.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to stop to make it at a decent hour of the day and come back at a decent hour of the day. I had no plans to stay, given that I had other commitments the following days.
Mhm.
So if I were to look back, I could have planned it out a little better, taken a flight. But my message here is sometimes you are pulled, your soul pulls you to do something. And honestly, if I hadn't done it with that level of urgency, it possibly wouldn't have been done because life happens. And if you have the urge to start something new, like Angela started her podcast, I started my podcast. Maybe this is your sign to start something new also, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I love that. It's like the universe is changing or directing you, and sometimes you just have to stop and listen and then figure out if something else that you hadn't planned on doing is calling you. then maybe you should be heading in that direction. So yeah, I agree with that.
Real cool.
Yeah. So what have you learned about doing a podcast?
I've learned that I enjoy bringing guests on the show.
Mm.
And I've also learned that I would frequent that. And my message kind of went to the background. I feel like, and looking back historically, objectively, I did not post solo episodes after I switched the name from Monologues with Marisol to Un Beyond Mindset. And I switched the name so I could accept more guests and make it more of a general message for the general audience. However, if you start a podcast, don't let your voice get hidden in the background. So sometimes, man, Angela, if money wasn't how if financial fiat money wasn't how the world would go round, I I wouldn't work. I wouldn't work. So to be honest, but I have big goals now. Um, Not that I didn't before, but ever since my brother passed away in 2022, September, I have a I'm called to a larger mission, I believe, that when you, excuse me, when you have a message, your mess should become your message, right? Whatever that means to you. So in my case, I've experienced grief. I've also had the misfortune to experience trauma, but now I'm changing my language to, you know what? It's actually a learning experience, and it's actually wisdom that I can now impart to someone else so that if they're wise, they can learn from my experiences and not have to make certain mistakes. What are your thoughts on learning from experiences and taking that as opportunities for growth?
Yeah, I also agree with you on that. There's a lot of things that we go through life, and everyone has their own journey and their own stories. But the way that you approach it with your attitude is a lot of times the only thing that you have control of in that situation, right? So if I want to be negative, if I want to think about, oh, me, so bad, me, then perhaps I'm not really learning from the situation. So you kind of have to take a step back and think about, okay, what's going on right now? What can I learn from this? And perhaps it may not be the route or the journey that I thought I was going to be on, but I'm going to take it and I'm going to move forward and I'm going to approach it with more of a positive mindset so that whatever that lesson is, or, maybe I made a mistake, maybe something happened that I was out of my control or something that was in my control. The way that I want to approach it is with my attitude being positive and learning from that. And then that gives you the opportunity in the future when someone else might be going through a similar journey to help teach them and help them through their journey and give back and be able to just, give back to the society is a huge thing for me as well, because when we learn from things and we can teach others, then they continue that journey, that journey as well, right? Because if you taught them, then perhaps they teach someone else. And it gives you the opportunity to reach more people and change more lives by just keeping that positive attitude and being more open to helping other people as well. So I really like that part of your story. And I wanted to jump back to the earlier point real quick for anyone who's thinking about starting a podcast and they do the interview format. It's definitely important to do some solo episodes as well, because it's still your brand, your podcast, and you've brought people to from an audience to you. They do want to get to know you as the host as well. So make sure that you're doing those solo episodes if you're doing a podcast in the interview format, because it's important to continue to build your brand so that your audience knows who you are, so they can connect to you. And then they're going to be able to listen and absorb more information when they know you as the host as well.
Totally. And I'm glad you brought that full circle. We're both authors.
Yes.
Angela wrote Empower Your Money. I wrote Un Beyond Mindset Health. Real quick, tell the audience 3 takeaways from your book, Angela.
Yeah. So the reason for my book is I wanted to write something that was simple for financial education. If you pick up a finance book or a money book, it's very thick, A lot of them have a lot of information, and it can be scary and overwhelming for someone who's not really studied finance like I have. So I have 101 tips in my book, and they're meant to pique curiosity. One, learning how to be creative when you have a logical mindset was not easy for me. So I did hire a coach to help me write the book, even though it is more of a simple book. But you understand from from the cover of the book to what you put into the book to the back of the book, there's a lot of thought that goes into that. So I would also say, like, if someone is thinking about becoming an author, know that there's a lot of hard work that goes into it, right? So that's probably a key takeaway, is making sure that I'm hiring an expert to help me with a book, because I don't want to just write a book to say I'm an author. I want to write a book to help change lives. And so if I'm going to deliver and take the time to do that, then hire an expert and make sure that you're getting that book out as professionally as possible in the right way by learning by someone else who's done it before. So the person that helped me with my book has written 30 books and has been a best-selling author and teaches about writing books. So hire the expert when you're looking to do something to deliver a message, because that's the whole purpose for me, was to write the book and deliver a message to help other people. That might have been more than 3 takeaways, but your turn.
I love that because we talk about continuing education, and going back to my initial opening, don't stop learning, right?
Mhm.
Invest that extra money to apprentice someone, to learn from someone who has walked the talk. And in my case, I released it November 2022, and I got guidance from someone who has written several books in
Mhm.
terms of the editing process, but I failed in the marketing process. I did not do a pre-launch. Things that I know now
Mhm.
have equipped me to do my next book, perhaps in the near future. So, what I can impart is from a medical background of a decade now, 4 as a volunteer and 6 as a licensed clinician, healthcare professional. I can tell you, number one, please look at your labs. Get some blood work done every
Mhm.
6 to 12 months just to know where you stand. And for example, a diagnosis such as hypertension, high blood pressure, where you just sit down, get a quick arm hug. It could tell you so much about your body in less than a minute.
Mhm.
And based off of that metric, you can then quantify things that you could do in your lifestyle to change your life, to add quality of years into your longevity, livelihood, so you could feel vibrant, healthy. Because who doesn't want vitality, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's one tip, Angela, is just do some blood work. Number two, go out into the sun first thing in the morning. A simple supplement such as vitamin D can tell you so much.
Mhm.
Vitamin D is huge in mood stabilization, bone health, and immune function. When I was on Skid Row helping the homeless early 2020, they would tell everyone who got diagnosed with a flu, and if they weren't symptomatic enough, to leave the hospital and just quarantine at home for 2 weeks, correct? Do you remember that?
Mhm.
But in that time frame of 2 weeks, what do you do? I feel as though that message wasn't clear for the public. And so in my book, chapter 4 is about the mindset of health, mindset. Chapter 10, I like to refer as my supplement chapter, in which I disclose some key supplements that the healthcare professionals at the time, nurse practitioners, physicians, DOs that I worked with in this sobering center where we would quarantine the homeless for the 2 weeks. Keys that I learned there that I could impart to all of you. So, one of them is magnesium, super important. You already know about vitamin D. So, yeah, those are 3 tips.
Yeah. And that's amazing too, because, giving the advice about taking care of your health and your body, right? That's where we should start. When people think about how can I improve my life? Well, we look at ourselves first, because if you're not the healthiest version of you, then how are you really going to impact other people? How are you going to be at your optimal self to run a business or to be an employee, to be, a mother, a parent, a wife, a husband, whatever roles that you have in your life? If you're not first taking care of yourself, then to me, it's impossible to truly take care of anybody else, family, businesses. The health is so important because it also helps with your mind, the way that you're functioning, the way that you sleep. So I really like those tips about, just simple things that you can change in your life so that you can have the healthiest version of you, which allows you to be the healthiest version of you for everybody else to see and for you to help take care of other people too. So that's that. I like that those are, simple tips, because I'm all about simplicity. How can we just make some small minor changes to have bigger impact without, thinking that you're going to have to do some crazy diet in order just to be an optimal version of you, where you can just improve your health with just some small little steps. So I love that about your book.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And what's next for you?
Yeah. So for me, similar to you, I love doing the podcast. I love sharing the stories and meeting new people. So I want to continue with the podcast. It's top 5% right now internationally or globally, top 5%. And I want to be able to reach more people. And I've had the opportunity to interview some people that are outside of the US. And I want to continue with that because I think we can learn a lot from other cultures, both mindset, business, money. And so reaching more people and becoming top 1% globally, that's a goal of mine. And so I'm kind of working with my team to figure out where is it that we need to improve so that we can get the message and deliver the message to more people. So what about you?
Amazing goals, top 1%. Let's do it.
Yep.
Woo! So for me, I want to be able to use my platform, number one, to spread the message of business and philanthropy, really. I feel
Mm.
as though both of them can live in harmony. I want to encourage everyone listening, if you have a business, you're thriving, you're doing well, perhaps open up a sector of philanthropy. And once a quarter or once a year before the end of the fiscal period, as we are around this time in December, go ahead and have a list of nonprofits that may speak to you and select top two, top three to donate on a continuous basis. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, we definitely have a responsibility to give back. And, people say, oh, I don't have enough money. Well, money's not the only way that you can give back and be philanthropical. You can give your time, you can tutor, you can mentor, you can do a food drive if you work at an office location. There's just so many different ways that you can give back. And yes, we do think about it a lot more during the holidays, but we have to remember that those people in need right now, they're in need every day. It's not just during the holidays. So figure out what is it that you have a gift for? How can you help? And, for me, it's church, and it's definitely, I'm very passionate about women and children that are in need. So I like to be able to volunteer in those areas. So figure out what is it that's important to you. Maybe it's something that you lived through, maybe it's something that you learned, and now you want to be able to give back. But every one of us have a talent of some sort that we can mentor or give back. So figuring out what that is and then utilizing it. And even if it's just an hour a month, you can find an hour in a month and give back your time. If you don't have the funds available to do the charitable money part of it, then at least give your time.
I love that. Exactly. As you mentioned, we're constantly looking for volunteers, not just donors, to drive our foundation. And I'm speaking about the Edgar Joel Uribe Foundation. We are a foundation that would like to support the autism community with
Mm.
more webinars for the general public, say in law enforcement and healthcare, to educate about their social cues and highlight their strengths. and see how we could all work together as a community to integrate these strengths and shed light on their rooms for improvement, right? And what we could do as a society to help bridge that communication gap. Another thing, too, is we are providing this community with a funeral fund, so to speak, so that they can cover their final expenses.
Mm.
So that's the mission with this charity. And I am just so happy and thankful to be on your podcast, Angela, and spread the word about this mission.
Yes. Now, if the audience wants to learn more about the foundation, how do they reach that website?
The EJUF.org.
Perfect. Good. So if my audience that's listening, you want to get involved, you're not sure which charity or if autism speaks to you, definitely go check out that website and figure out how you can help.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Next question for you.
Hmm.
Tell me about the Angela, because I see you with, say, Natalie Dawson, all these 10x entrepreneurs, billionaires, really. Tell me about the Angela 10 years from now. What's a personal goal? What's a professional goal? And what's a financial goal?
Yeah, so that's great questions. And that's, a good point too, is I have found Grant Cardone in the 10X community. For me, that's an amazing community. And so if you're looking for a community, test out a bunch of different ones. You got to figure out which one is working for you, which one's right for you, which one that you're going to learn from. So I'm here in Miami and they have 100 events a year and there's so many of them that are local for me. So it's very easy for me to get to. But I do believe power in proximity. So if you have a goal and you want to do more in life, then you want to find people who are already doing that. And what I love about the Cardone community is I've been able to meet so many business owners and entrepreneurs, and they have a similar mission where they want to build and create wealth and build generational wealth, but they also give back too. They're willing to pick up the phone or send a text message if I have questions. We invest in real estate together. We give back together. So me in 10 years, I would like to be the person perhaps that people are coming up to and asking more questions to, or maybe wants to take a photo with me, because then I know that I am truly reaching people and impacting people because they do seek me out. So while I go take a photo with Natalie, I listen to her podcast, The Billionaire Mindset. I get a lot of information from it, but I also want to tell her, hey, what you're doing is working for me. So keep doing it. I find value in it because, as you probably know, when you do a podcast, you don't always know, like, is the audience receiving my information? Do they like the information that I'm putting out? And so when someone comes up and validates that for you, then you know that you're on the right path and that you need to continue your mission. So I guess that would be where I would see myself in 10 years. What about you?
Similar note, in my song, it's in Spanish, I sing about how the mission is to touch 1 billion lives.
Mhm.
And in that prospectus, we need to quantify starting with a smaller scale, right? So I'm able to look at my podcast metrics. I'm able to know how many people it can reach. But like you mentioned, it's not until we receive the engagement,
Mhm.
the emails that come in, the direct messages, where you really get to know if it touches someone's life. And I got a story, Angela. I just met someone and they told me, hey, did you, are you the singer of Umbiyon? I said, yeah, I listened to it on the radio. I'm like, what? No way. So that I want more of that too, um, because they heard the message. That's validation that they heard the message. And what is my call to action in that song is to join me in thinking abundantly and thinking about the mindset of health. And that is something that is not quantifiable. Earlier, you mentioned about the layout, the graphic of your cover of your book. Quick story about my design. The reason why it has a crown is because when you are in dis-ease, in a state of sickness, you're ill, it's a crown on a healthy individual is sort of like invisible to the sick person, but they see it. They
Mm.
see it and they regard it as highly favorable, needed. We all have needs, we all have wants. And so you only have one wish. And so that's kind of the backstory behind the crown is everyone seeks after health. And really, when you're in a lack of wellness and that state of vibrancy where you really desire it the most. So don't wait until your health is tanked. Do proactive steps now to make sure that you stay out of the hospital.
Yeah. Good advice. Good advice. So as we start to wrap up the podcast, I do have a fun question for you, which I normally do on my podcast, is I like to kind of ask a fun question at the end. But if you could have a superpower or a super talent, what would it be and why would you choose it?
I would love to be able to superpower teleport, like go somewhere else and be there in the flesh and then come back and bypass air travel.
Yeah.
I think that would be amazing. How
Yeah.
about you?
Mine would be to be able to, like, I'm a Christian, I go to church, and I would love to be able to sing in a way that people could receive it. Meaning, like, for you, for example, if I try to sing, nobody's going to listen to it. But when I'm in church and I have just this incredible singer in front of me, like I can feel the words and I get so emotional with music and listening to it. Like if I could have that talent to be able to sing and have that incredible positive impact on someone with my words, I think that would be my favorite incredible talent.
And to wrap up my show, a question that I ask every guest is, what does having an un billón mindset mean to you?
Yeah. So for me, mindset is really important because I naturally can be a negative person. And
Mm.
if I don't work on that talent every single day with my mindset, what's coming into my mind and keeping it positive, then I'm not going to reach more people. Nobody's going to listen to a negative person teaching money. It's already a hard topic to listen to. So I know in order for me to reach more people and to have that kind of impact on the world, I need to very much control my mindset, what's coming into it, and what I do every day to make sure that I stay in that positivity. And you?
On that note, our brain is 2 billion years old. We are programmed to be on the fight or flight mode.
Mm-hmm.
And don't pay attention to every single thought that goes into your mind because it could be a ton of lies. You could lie to yourself every day if it's not aligned to the trajectory of the person that you want to be. So, a key takeaway, I'm going to plug in Brandon Dawson's book because I think it's a great book, Nine Figure Mindset.
Mm-hmm.
He writes to think of yourself in the 10-year version. And anything that doesn't align with that, like throw it away.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I want to actually wrap up with think abundantly,
Mm-hmm.
right? What is the difference between someone donating to a charitable cause? What's the difference between $1 million or $10 million?
Mm-hmm.
If they're able to give $10 million in a lump sum, what's the difference between, and let's say they both make the same amount of money. What is the difference between someone that donated the 1 million and someone that gave away the 10 million? It's the abundant mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It's the person that gave 10 million knows that they'll get it back. They're less in fear. So I encourage all of you to live with less fear and with more love.
Love that. So for my audience that's listening and just learning about you for the first time, how do they reach you? Social media, let us know.
You could find me on LinkedIn at Marisol Uribe. That's my name. You can find me on Instagram. I've got two accounts. One's like my backup. Just type in Marisol dot the number one, the word billion dot mindset.
Awesome. And for anyone looking to reach me, Empower Her Money across all social media platforms. Thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. I thoroughly enjoyed this and looking forward to catching up soon.
Thank you so much for tuning into Empower Her Money podcast. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast, and leave a review wherever you are tuning in.